Hello, chess friends. This is International Master Valeri Lilov, and welcome to tonight's broadcast on YouTube. It's been a while since I had this last, and yeah, I hope you guys missed me. So today what I'm going to talk about is a really interesting concept. I'm going to be talking about practical chess. Now, before we begin, I'd like to give a little bit of an introduction on what actually is practical chess. So when somebody tells you, okay, you don't play good practical chess, you only play good theoretical chess, what does he really mean? Now, if you think of it, this is a very complicated concept because practical and theoretical always interject. There's no theoretical without good practical. There is no good practical without good theoretical. And the easiest way to understand it is like the same way you understand tactics and strategy. Okay, they're not the same thing, but they work in the same way. Theoretical is when there is a position that is well known as a typical line or maybe typical structure that you're sort of set to design your pieces and your development in a particular way. Well, the practical situation is the situation that you don't have a specific knowledge on how to do it. For example, imagine chess 960, where all the pieces start in a jumbled order. There's no theory, so we have the practical game. Yet there are a lot of important theoretical patterns that players need to use when they play well practically. So that's why I say that these two topics are really well connected. And yet, they're different. So in order to show you how different they are and what you need to know in order to master the practical chess, I'm going to bring up examples of the great new course by top Grandmaster Valeri Lilov. He is one of the Grandmasters that I've been following since I was a very young kid. I saw him playing against Kasparov once, and my dad showed me the game. It was very impressive. So essentially, recently he made a very nice course on the master method to practical play. And so I would like to share with you a little bit of a glimpse on what this whole thing is all about and how you can deliver that. How can you bring that to your games? In the meantime, if you check the link below the video, you could see a huge discount for the actual training package. You're going to love the idea of really learning from a top Grandmaster. And I'm going to try to bring you a little glimpse of what he actually meant. Keep in mind, 50% off directly beneath the video. I'm going to put a link to the chat on the in the actual chat, but you can check it out. So we're going to start with the Grandmaster game. Hold on. What if you said, really bad? Sound is very bad. Okay, really? Sound is very bad? Okay, why is the sound very bad? This is not supposed to be bad. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so hold on for 1 second. I'm gonna try to put the other microphone. This one's supposed to be working, but for some reason it seems like it's not working. So I'm gonna have to bring my other microphone just to make sure everything's okay. So hold on for just 1 second. Hold on. Okay, let's see. Okay, guys, is this better now? I do hope you can hear me clearly, or more clearly than before. I just put in my other microphone. Maybe the first one just did not work for some reason. Could you confirm? So, better. Okay. So, let's get on the topic with practical chess. Don't forget, link below this video, 50% off of the top Grandmaster Valeri Lilov method. I put a link on the chat. So, let's talk about a few incredible examples of the powerful practical chess that Grandmaster Valeri Lilov is explaining. I'm going to start with one of them now. Just give me a second. Here we go. Now, This game was actually played by Grandmaster Vallejo and Grandmaster named Julio Sadora. It's a pretty exciting game, so to speak, and there's a lot to learn in this. So, Vallejo was actually playing with white in this game, and in his lecture, he speaks a lot about the different critical moments and practical ideas he was able to apply. Here's what I was able to get and what I can tell you guys from his game. So, first of all, we had a French defense. It's a pretty good opening. Knight d2, bishop e7. White setting out the knight on d2 instead of c3 so that black doesn't get to pin. Of course, now white plays c3, and then black just counters the center with c5. You don't get to see such a counter very often, but now it makes sense because it instantaneously brings the challenge. So we have this possibility to play with like c5 in case of the exchange, and there could be a recapture. And okay, so that's fine. After that move, pawn to c5. Then what happened? Let's see. c5, there is d takes to the c, bishop takes to the c, and bishop to d3. So white just developed very well. He actually sets up all of his pieces towards the center, and then he continues with the move of knight gf3. So he brings out the knight, and he castles. So far, we're going quickly because there's really nothing special to talk about. And then we go to the point of short castling, where white has to decide what to do. So let's see. What is white supposed to do right now? He's got this space and I think the control. So what should white be doing? Should he try to figure out a way to attack, or should he try to figure out a way to develop his pieces? What's the best way to play around here? So this is my first question to you. Let's just think about this position and try to figure out what is the most efficient way to get things to work. What's the right activity here? I want you to take your time and figure carefully. I think personally that pawn on e4 is pretty important because seeing how it stands becomes clear that apparently it's well protected by the knight and the bishop, so it's good. On the other hand, white can't develop because of it. He can't bring out the knight or even the bishop because black will take it. So there is that problem. And we have to ask ourselves, should we move the pawn or should we exchange it? Or perhaps we should protect it. What is white's best way to go right now? Now, when you think very carefully, e5, knight d7, exactly. That's what you would like to do in this position. e5, or you would like to play e takes to the d. E takes to the d just helps black big time. We don't want that. You don't want to be helping the opponent in such a way. What you really want to do is to find a simple move with which you could actually push the opponent back. There's e5. It's a very simple move. Now, bishop takes h7, not really. As soon as white played with e5, black actually did go for the move of knight d7. And I know you would really love to see that bishop takes h7 take place, but not really. Knight g5 is just not possible. The important thing about this is there are patterns. Even though we would call this a practical play, the pattern is a pattern. And when you've got a pattern, then you could use it in a variety of different practical positions. The first pattern we learn is how necessary it is to control space. Everybody knows it, but not a whole lot of people do it. And the reason is because they don't really look for it. You have to know that gaining more space, or as I often call it, expanding, is essential. With that pawn commanding the f6 square and pushing the black knight out of the way, you see that the black king side is actually quite vulnerable. So he moves back with his knight, and now white does knight b3, driving the black bishop out of the way. Now, the real question is, what would you do here? There is the possibility to make a move of bishop takes h7 check right now because the g5 square is already control. Or there's the opportunity to not do it. if you don't want to. So I think it's really just a matter of, do you do it or you don't do it? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Should we just choose to play something else? And as you're thinking, I'd like to mention one very important factor. When you're sacrificing or considering something so committal as this move, remember that you better have a very good follow up or continuation. Because if you make even the smallest type of mistake, you're done. Like, the game is literally done. You're going to lose and you're not going to know how this happened. So, what should white do now? Knight g5. I think that was a nice idea, knight g5, but then black will drive it. Bishop takes h7 is an interesting candidate with knight g5. But as always, and as I mentioned before, the problem of such a sequence is that he will just escape. And then wherever we go, it's connected with huge risks. Now, of course, it's important to calculate it because it may be winning. But when you're thinking of a sacrifice like that in your real game, and you reach a position like this, you feel it's good, but you don't know how you will continue. Don't do it. Remember, don't do it. I don't want you to chicken out and then just say, I don't care. I mean, I'm just gonna just escape. I want you to be brave, but I want you to understand that being brave is not always the same as being smart. And oftentimes, the braver you try to be, the more you expose yourself to the risk. So how do we know, really, if what we're going to do is good enough or maybe it's too risky? Well, here's my thinking. If the line does not bring you much of a follow-up, okay, then you have to know the only most important thing is you need to have a good minimum. The minimum is like, you say, if anything goes wrong, or if anything or everything goes wrong, what's the least I can get to compensate my material or to compensate me for making this change? If the minimum is not there, if the follow-up is not there and you're doubting yourself, don't do it. There's a good chance it just feels right, but it's not the right time to do it. And in tactic books, you have to know that it's always the right time to do it because they're always the best. They're only a selection. In your games, it's 50-50. It could work or it may not work. And you better know what you have. So essentially, white didn't do it. He realized that bishop takes h7 is just way too risky, despite the good looks. You'll always look good. But it doesn't mean that you have to choose it. So what we say is that for a committal sacrifice or sacrificial move like that, we need a strong follow-up or we need a good minimum. If we don't have a good minimum winning, or if you don't have a great follow-up, then you better wait. That moment is going to come. Now, bishop takes h7 perhaps is better now. So that's why black played f6. E takes f, and knight takes f6. So over here, we have more or less of what I call an early middle game position. And it's interesting because the early middle game is considered when all the pieces are developed, but sometimes it starts a little earlier. Or maybe we could start thinking about it a little earlier, right now. So what would you like to do in a position like this? You see, there's no theoretical concept that tells you do this or do that. Now, it's a good concept about sacrifices, but early middle game, a position in which you feel like there's nothing developed yet, how do you approach that? It's tricky. It's not easy, you know? So what to do now? Knight bd4. Absolutely. Thank you very much. This is the idea. We're putting up a good pressure against the opponent's e6 pawn. And then we've got not only those two knights well coordinated, and the rook, of course, but we're taking the chance to begin our play. One of the most essential things is to start your play, to begin it against a weakness, against a big vulnerability. The big vulnerability in this position definitely turns out to be this one e6 pawn. Does white intend to win it? Not at all. He just wants to set his pieces right. And that's your goal. If you can find a way to attack, that's great. In fact, even in gambits, you see one sacrifices a pawn, and instead of thinking of an attack, he realizes that development is more important. And if he can combine the development with good attack, he'd love to do that. But development is more important. So ultimately, that's what we're relying on. That's what we care about most. So it was a great move, knight d4. Absolutely. Quiet, positional. It's not boring. It's just what's necessary. So white played now bishop e3. And it's interesting to see the connection between the white pieces at this point. So black jumped out to play with knight g4. And that was basically his mistake. Do you guys see what white should do or what he can do right now? Think about this very carefully. This is a pretty good position. I have to tell you that it looks pretty awesome at this moment. So what to do now? You're thinking, so keep looking. Bishop takes h7. Sound is messed up. It's not me. It is not me, the sound. I'm not, it's not my problem. Sorry, sound sucks. No, it's not. It's not me. I think it's YouTube that's doing that, you know? It is not me. Oh, come on, really? How about now? How about now? Can you hear me? Guys? Hello? Guys, can you hear me? All right? Yeah, blame, I mean, I don't know. I'm using a big microphone right now, you know, my biggest. Same as before. Let me change it to the old one. Hang on. How about now? Guys, can you hear me? Is it all right? Can you hear me better? Hello, guys. Can you please confirm? Okay. The sound is going to be, this is not me. It's not me. I'm using my old microphone that was not working before. It's not me. It's YouTube. It's not my connection either. I have a very fast connection. It's YouTube. Blame YouTube. Let's blame YouTube. All right, no, I'm kidding. Just all right. So let's see. Going back, bishop takes h7. I hope you've had a chance to figure it out right now, and that's the one to go. Bishop takes h7. This is the perfect move. It's a perfect candidate. It's a really good move. And it's just what white wanted. I mean, in the end of the day, that's what he was looking for. Let's attack, and let's do things right. After that, it was an effective candidate in this position. Yes. So after that move of bishop takes h7, black is definitely in a big trouble. He has a real issue. And then black played king h8. So he realized that taking on h7 will mean knight g5. I want you to remember this one position right now, guys, about in the concept that's associated with it. The most important thing is remember, wait, let your opponent make the mistake. Build up your position until that point comes where you're ready or when you have the right tools so you can actually challenge the opponent and take advantage of the position. This is how it's done. With the move of knight to the g5, things are actually working out perfectly. And that's why Black didn't do it. He played King H8, just running away, running down the ladder. So it's like it's a nice looking little move, hoping to get that king out of the danger. So what should White do next? Hmm. Twitch, yeah, it's a good side. It's a good side. I'm gonna use that sometime, but not now. So King H8. Think White has to move. Knight G5. No, not now, not anymore. If we do this, Black is just gonna take our pawn. He's gonna kill our king. No way. We cannot do this. You know what? A lot, and I mean a lot of chess players forget about in these positions. They forget about how necessary it is to stabilize. Here's a situation that's very real, and it appears in a lot of tournament games, in a lot of amateur players' games too. Somebody wins material. He's cheerful. He says, "Oh, look at what I did. It's great." But that's just for a little bit, because the reality is that they very quickly get disappointed, and the reason why they get disappointed is because they don't stabilize. There's a paradox in chess which says that if you win material, you will lose the initiative. Now that happens in 97% of the times. The other 3%, you don't. But those 3% are usually the completely winning positions or very special positions. In most times, we lose our initiative, and that hurts. It hurts the feeling because instead of attacking anymore, we say, all right, I've got this long-term advantage, but you attack me now. You see, it feels bad. It feels painful. And more importantly, it feels like it's going to take a while until we get back into play, until we get back to where we want to be. So how do you deal with such a situation? You can only deal with it in one way: stabilize. If you want to prevent your opponent from coming forward to any counterplay, you have to act towards stabilizing. Like anything that's dangerous, you have to take it safe. The bishop to the c2 move was a great one because above all else, what it did was just to help White to turn his bishop right back to a nice square, and everything looks great. Everything looks awesome. Everything is awesome. After bishop c2, Black actually does the move of e5. And then White plays knight x to c6, making even more powerful concept, which is let's exchange. More traits, more possibilities. Like exchange, there's the take, and then there's h3. So we hit the knight and the pawn. And Black really didn't know what to do. Now, it's interesting to show both sides here and point out that Black wasn't actually that terrible. I mean, he was terrible, but he could have his chance. All he had to do was just to take here like that and keep the formation. Like, he should have kept his activity, and perhaps after rook f6, he would have something. Unfortunately, he didn't see it. And he just played knight takes to the e3 in order to, I don't know, do something. So how would you like to play with White? Think about this position. It's a good position. There's a strength. And what should I do now? Take with the pawn, take with the rook. Now there are two options. I think you know what White chose to play, but it's not about what he chose to play. It's about why he chose to do it. Why did White choose and did what he did? That is the real question of the day, isn't it, guys? Isn't it? What did White choose, and why the hell did he choose it? Queen to d3, not working. I like the idea, appreciate it. But if you do the move of queen to the d3, what's going to happen is that he's just going to take you on the c2, and you are in not good position. And I was just going to say something else, but you don't want to be in this position. So what you want to do is just make sure that you simplify and not have f takes to the f takes to the b takes to c will be ordinary. We play rook takes to the e3, which is a great move because after rook takes to the e3, now we're attacking the pawn on c on the e5. So if black plays b takes to the c, we have knight takes to the e5 and knight g6. And now black has only one option: take the e3. So what should white do now? Queen d3, no problem. He'll do e4. He'll do e4 though. He's going to push you back. You can't do that. You got to do something else. What's white's best way to go? Take a moment and think about this carefully. Now, d1 to d3. No, knight takes d5, of course. What's the most important thing here? Keep the integrity of your position. That's not an easy thing. In fact, it's a hard thing to do. But if you can do it, everything is great. Black's rook on e8 seems completely out of play. Knight g6 check is threatening, and it actually looks like a pretty easy game. We just took that opportunity and we check him, we challenge him, and then he's kind of losing it. No way, no chance or opportunity for him to do much differently. So that's the whole thinking. I mean, after knight takes to the e5, especially with the idea of knight to the g6, black is kind of losing it. And in reality, after the move of knight takes to the e5, what did black play? He actually decided to play with bishop takes f2. He realized that he can't save both the rook and the bishop. So he decided at least to make sure he gives up the bishop with a tempo. And guess what? White didn't take it. Now that's called sense of danger. Not taking the bishop is sense of danger? No. Sense of danger is when you know that you're winning and you're scared to make sure you don't lose. And that sounds more like a problem than an actual, like good character trait. But the reality is people don't feel that way. When they're winning, they feel cheerful. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you feel bad, even in the winning positions, then probably you have to work on your attitude during the game. But truth is, if it gets too much, then you lose sense of what the opponent is thinking about. And your opponent is thinking about any chance he's got to counterattack you. I mean, every and any chance or opportunity he's looking through. While you're thinking more about like, oh, I go here and he'll do that. I'll go here and he'll, do that. Like this. When you're thinking that he's just going to figure out a reaction, he's not thinking like that. He is looking like a computer being at 200%, trying to find the move which will make you lose your advantage. So the reality is you should never let your guard down, not even for a second, because if you do, you lose it. King h1 kept the white potential. It smartly escaped the actual attack that black was creating. And then once the black bishop comes to the f5 square, white plays bishop takes f5, rook takes f5, and queen c2. There is rook 8 f8, and now white plays queen takes f2. Queen takes d5, knight takes e5, rook takes f2, knight g6 check, king g8, knight takes f8. So that was pretty amazing. After that move of knight takes f8, as the black king took it, white is a pawn up. Now you're gonna say, this is it? I'm just getting to the position where I'm a pawn up with my rook on b1. I mean, come on, I don't want to be in a position like that. I know, but this is a practical situation. Sometimes you don't wanna, and you have to. And when you don't wanna, when you have to, if you think about every single game that you've played, when you don't want to play something and you have to, usually you lose. So what do you do when you're in a position like that? Okay, White made all these exchanges, and he's getting himself in a pretty horrible position, or horrible to look at least. When you don't want to, but you have to, there's only one guideline for you to follow. Make sure you don't give him anything. Don't give him the smallest bit of a chance to break down your position or cause any threats. Because if you give him something, that something is likely going to become quite a bit of something. That little thing is going to become a big thing. So in difficult positions, our attitude, the practical approach we should take, must be always to stabilize. Is it going to hurt you? Yes. Is there a way not to hurt? No. You have to stay strong, though. I mean, the most important thing is to stay solid. If you can do this, however challenging or tough the position is, you're always going to persevere and get to enjoy your long-term advantage later. But now it's going to hurt, and it's going to hurt badly. After rook to b1, black played g5, and white just played h3. King e7 and king h8. It doesn't matter what black does. We're ready to continue. We're moving the king up to the g3, and we're moving the king up to f3, a3. Is it easy? No. Is it good? No. Is it necessary? Yes. If you're ever in a difficult, problematic, losing position, rule number one, don't let him to do anything dangerous to destroy your position. Stabilizing, solidifying, the more you can do this, the harder it's going to be for him to prove anything. And bigger the chance is that he's just going to push up and then sacrifice or let it go, like White did in this case. So let's see what you've got, what you've got out there, guys. Like, what do you think White should do? I'm sounding off again. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's try it now again. I'm going to just change my microphone. How about now? Do you guys hear me better? Can you hear me okay now? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me okay? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. b4. No, it was black who played b4. c3 takes b4. Yes, definitely. But then after a takes to the b4, what do we do? I mean, if we take, black is just going to go back and take that pawn back. So what to do? Takes pawn. Yes, we did take. Do we take again? I'm going to let you think here for a second. a4, absolutely. Thank you. That was a great move. Do you know what matters most in chess? It's the pass pawns, because when you get a pass pawn, you turn it into something menacing. That's what White does right now. He knows that this pawn is going to be great, and he also knew that there was very little that Black can do to stop it, really. It's a beautiful line, and it's a great-looking move. So what do we have to worry about? It is just excellent. And then after that type of move, we could see that Black is in a big trouble there. So actually, after that type of move of pawn up to the a4, we have the rook coming down to a1, and things are great. So actually, after the move of pawn to a4, then so let's take a look and see what happened out there. So like pawn to a4, and so like after a4, king e5, and so then White played with a5, starting to set that pawn right up. And then like after a4, a5, king d6, and king g4, rook d3, and now White has an incredible endgame. I want you to think about this endgame. Like, this is a very different position from where we initially started. But do you know what's in common in every single position in chess? Not like the rule, is that obviously in common. In terms of patterns, like what is the common pattern we always care about? Let's see if anybody can tell me. Tell me the pattern that works in every position, that is important in every single situation in chess. There's nobody talking in the background. No, no, no. Not yet. Before, but not now. Why not b3 was played by black? I don't think that there will be b3. See, b3 does not work, but think about the pattern. Activity. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. The move of rook c1 applies that one rule, the principle of activity. Piece activity, activity, domination. Yeah, piece domination. But really, that's the most important thing. Pass pawn, no. In the middle game, a pass pawn is going to be blocked and taken. In every single stage of the game, the activity matters, but it most matters in the end game because there are fewer pieces, and when some are better than others, they're actually quite critical. Rook a3, there is pawn to a6, rook e8, and king takes g5. Black plays d4, and then white plays for the move pawn up to h4. King d5, pawn up to h5. Now we're seeing that white's active king and the rook are being able to engage those type of pass pawns, and then after king to the d4, and we would play with the move h7. d2, rook d1, king d3, g4. And then as black plays with king c2, we exchange, takes, king f6, and then we have the a7. And so what we realize is the main difficulty that like black has in this position. There's g5 plus g6 and then g7, and then the pawn is going to promote pretty quickly. So it's great, very, very effective example. So you see, the most interesting thing about this, like the example about this position is it's pretty important. I mean, going right back to the earliest stage, you see, it's just like when white supported the pawn on e5, he began with just building up. Now, if you look at Carlsen's games, Carlsen is incredibly successful, even in some of the games in which he's not putting that much effort. He's incredibly successful because of that one thing. He builds up a strong position and lets the opponent make the mistake. Now, a lot of people interpret that by just saying, all right, I'm going to build up and I'm going to wait. No, waiting is not an option. Waiting is going to worsen your position. You're going to build up, and you're going to keep building up, and you're going to keep building up. And the moment where most chess players get frustrated is when they keep building up and there's nothing going on. And that's where the strong players, they keep building up and they keep building up and they keep building up until that moment arises and they strike. The important thing is to be consistent and to break down the bad habit of calculating variations and just looking for the best shortcut that will help you to win the game. The practical approach to chess requires that one idea. The build-up is more important than anything else. And of course, that makes him to follow and to break down his strategy. This was an incredible example on how a practical approach to the game can help you to win with less than no effort. Essentially, White didn't do anything. He followed the idea of stabilizing when position is difficult, of improving in the beginning, of making sure that he just waits until Black makes a mistake. And yet he doesn't wait, but rather improves anything that he could. And that brings me to my last thing. Do you know how you find moves like Rook C1? I bet you can't say. Maybe you say, if I remember a principle of activity. Yeah, I mean, that's true. But there's a question in chess that very few people ever think about. That is the question of what's missing. It's easy to look at the position and think about it like, oh, look at me, I'm so handsome. I have this great line and that file and that pawn and that king and that rook and that bishop and that knight. It's great, but think about it. Just as much as you think about what you've got, you'd always have one or two things that you don't. And my experience as a chess player and a coach has always proven that those things you don't have, even if they're not critical, the moment you bring them into play, things become incredibly powerful for you. The most powerful method in chess is improving the worst waste piece. I've seen it many times and it always works. The most important question in chess is what's not working for me? What do I have to improve? Instead of thinking about what do I want? What do I hit him? What do I need in the position? If you teach yourself over and over and over again in asking that question and answering that question as much as you can, you're never going to be wrong. You'll know what to do, and you'll know what kind of problems you got to resolve. So I want to ask you, if you want me to send you this game with annotations, just please do send me an email. I would really appreciate it if you could send me an email to my email address, which is valeri.lilov@gmail.com. I'm going to put my email on the chat. So please do send me an email. This is an incredibly instructive game. You can add all those notes, especially after the replay when you can do it. So just send me an email if you want me to send you that game to valeri.lilov@gmail.com, or you can visit my website, tigerlilov.com, and just send me a message through there. That's fine. So what? Okay, so now sound is so bad it can't be heard. Let me change the microphone. I'm going to change the microphone again. How about now, guys? Can you hear me okay? Is it the sound all right now? Can anyone hear anything besides me drinking a coffee? Anyone? You guys hear? Anyone? Sound is good now. Thank you. Use Twitch. All right. Refresh you to YouTube. Maybe, yeah. I think it's a YouTube issue. It's not mine issue. I have a connection, which is, I mean, a lot of countries don't have that connection. I have a connection of 200 megabytes per second. So it's a far more than in anyone of 200 megabytes download and 120 upload. So essentially, I shouldn't have any glitches. And the microphone is also new and it's big, so it's not that. I think it's just the stream, and somewhere along the way you get lost bytes. So anyway, I was just gonna say, if you guys want me to send you a link, just email me to valeri.lilov@gmail.com or tigerlilov.com. And do not forget, 50% off of Grandmaster Valeri Ponce, who played this game, and his course on practical strategy in chess. So check it out. It's the link below the video, and check the link on the chat too. So let's take a look at another game. Now this game is super instructive. I picked it up because it's just so interesting. Like you'd really like to find it. Give me 1 second. Now the next game, 1 second, was actually played by Valeri Ponce again. But it was a slightly different game. I have to copy it right now. This is a game he lost. And it's interesting to talk about that game he lost and see why he lost. It was played between Fabiano Caruana and Valeri Ponce. So what happened in this game? How did the Grandmaster, who won so brilliantly in this one, lose so terribly in this next one? Let's have a look and find out. Caruana was playing white, and he started out with e4, c5, knight f3, d6, d4, exchange recaptures, knight f6, and knight c3. As black played with a6, white played f3, e5, and knight b3. Bishop e6, bishop e3, and bishop e7. White did queen d2, and now black played h5. So take a look. We're actually observing the game from the black point of perspective. We're talking about black who lost it. You can see the result out there. Black lost this game. So where we're looking, why the hell are we looking at a game that black lost? We want to hear how to play, how not to play. But this game has such a value that you just need to see it. Long side castle at bd7, so everything went fine. h3, queen c7, bishop d3, and h4. You can see the advance of the h pawn basically brings strong value to black's possibility to restrict. f4, b5. So far, black has actually made an almost brilliant development. Rook h e1. And now black castled short. So far, so good. The king finds its safe place, and white played g4. So this was the time where black was like, hey, this is actually a free pawn. Can we just take it? I mean, if you look at this position after h6 of the g, you see that black's got an idea of b4 to follow. And even if white takes it, it's going to take him a long time, and likely he'll lose the initiative. So black just played h6g. Now, my question to you guys is this. Was black's decision right? Or it was not? According to the computer, it was right. But what about you? What would you say about black's decision to take that pawn? Was it right? Or was it wrong? See what you're saying. You are saying, nope. That means no, it was right, or no, it was wrong. Open up the king. I want to open the files in front of my king. Exactly. Wrong because it gives counterplay. It's not only about that. The rule says never move on the area where you're weak, and you should never even touch there, much less so open lines. You see, in chess, I like to say that there are three things. There are principles, there are rules, and there are concepts. The principles are above everything else. You know, when somebody tells you do not play on the area of the board where your opponent is going, what is that? It's a rule. The principle is like, just make sure you fight for the center. Make sure that you can, get the pieces out. It's an absolute. You have to follow it. The rules you can break. The concepts are working most times. If we have to put it as a percentage, principles works in 95%. Rules work at 90%. And concept work at 85%. But how do we know if we can break a rule? Or we should follow it? Breaking a rule always comes with the worst thing in chess, risk. The risk is the worst thing in chess because when you put yourself at risk, you have to be extremely careful not to lose track of the position, not to make a mistake. But sometimes the risk is worth it because we're getting rewarded by receiving possibilities and resources that we could only dream for if we don't take that risk. The problem is when there is no reward. When we just take on the risk for the sake of winning a pawn or just having an exciting position. Like what black did here is that he didn't really get anything. That pawn was going to be lost. The g file was going to be open. You see, so if you're going to take on breaking the rules, better make sure you have a good damn reason to do it. And make sure that you calculate it as hell. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Even then, even in those positions in which you can have an exception, it's still likely not going to work if you mess it up. But usually, you don't want to break a rule unless you have a super good reason and it doesn't work. So like initially we don't feel it. You could say, well, why? Why shouldn't we play? I don't see it. I mean, you don't need to see it. When you're walking down the abyss, you don't necessarily know where it's going to get you, but you know it's an abyss, so it's just that it's going down. That's all you need to know. Breaking a rule is the same thing. Playing backward moves is the same thing. Now, black took the g3, and that was enough so that his position gets downhill. All he had to do is just to continue planning his play with b4. Instead, he actually did knight e5. He hoped that the calculation is going to break the rule, and it never happens. Calculation cannot break a rule because the rule, the principle, even the concept, it's part of the idea of a structure. When you build the right structure, it gives you possibilities. We as humans just cannot calculate all the variations. And however much you try, there's always the chance that you'll miss something. But if you follow the principle, if you follow the rule, you're never going to make a mistake because you know this is the right thing to do. You know this is the right path. You don't need to see the abyss and know what's beneath it. So after queen c5, of course, white did not take. He played bishop e3. And you're going to see how black's position goes progressively worse. See, this is a very practical thing. It's not something that books say. And that's why I do recommend you to take a look at Grandmaster Valeri Lilov's course, because he talks a lot about the different practical ideas that we should and we should not follow. And it's an amazing price too. It's 50% off just for any of you who wants to get an actual advantage of that course. So you can check up the link below the video or check it on the chat. In any case, he tried his best in this game. He wanted to do this stuff well, and he almost did. He put the queen on, he put the bishop on. But that one thing that he actually took on g3, he never got away with it. It's just after king b1, knight takes d3 and c takes to the d3. I mean, okay, white's also made some inaccuracies. But you could see this constant problem looming over black's position. What if I take on g3? What if I attack you? Of course, I think that there were better ways on how white could have played this. But in any case, let's see what happened. Takes, knight h5. Queen e2. And it almost looks like black resolved the problems. And I think that he kind of did. White just did not realize what was the better way to play it. He had better ways to play it, but he didn't. So black stabilized, and he won another pawn. Yet he lost this game. How the hell did he lose that game? Everything looks better. Looks like he's actually saved himself. What happened? Now, breaking the rules has two aspects to it. Consciously breaking them, knowing that I should not go back or I shouldn't do this, but maybe this one time I can. I just really, really want to do this. I really, really want to go that move. Or there's this other aspect when we break the rule and we don't even know that we broke it. So then we're wondering, where did I just mess up? I mean, it was not a bad game. I don't know. I messed up somewhere. So with the conscious breaking of the rules, you can really control it. As long as you're more disciplined and you do not get tempted, you're good. But the unconscious breaking of the rules is more of a problematic question. What black did in this position was the move of queen b5, which was immediately encountered by the move of rook f5. He countered it with that, g takes f5, and the move of knight d4, which really busted black's position. The reality is that now with that queen being threatened and the white knight arriving at c6 or f5, it was impossible for black to defend the knight, g3, and e7. So as a result, of course, he was losing. And it's a very interesting thing because due to the e7, the queen cannot also help. But black lost it in pretty much one move. Even if he didn't take the rook, but he just moved the queen out of the way, he'd still lose because of that takes and check. Now, you might argue this was a tactical mistake, and I would agree it was a tactical mistake. But how many of you would see rook f5 so quickly? Some will, okay, but others wouldn't. It was a Grandmaster with 2664 that did not see that. So what's so important for you to remember is that when it comes down to following rules, you have to develop, I would call it, an internal mechanism of recognizing when something's wrong. I call that the sense of danger. The sense of danger is a really interesting concept that's not so well elaborated in most chess books, because while they mention it, they can't explain it because it's such a practical idea that it would take many books to try and be explained. The sense of danger can be developed if you work through situations or positions in which there is a big mistake. And oftentimes that's your games. I mean, you can do that with your games. And then you try to understand the reason behind your mistake and why it happened and what you should do to avoid it. If you do that long enough, you are going to start, instead of just building up, and setting up patterns for strategy and planning and evaluation, you're going to actually develop a feel of what is not supposed to happen, what I'm not supposed to do. For example, if I look at a move like queen to the b5, it will immediately make a strong impression to me that this move isn't supposed to be good, because I'm going to consider it backward. Now, in a real game, if you know it's backward and you still play it, that's a conscious decision to break the rules. But if you don't realize it's backward, then it means that you probably don't know, or you haven't developed that feel, that sense of, okay, this is the rule, I shouldn't break it. So to develop that sense of danger, you need to work harder on bad moves. Work harder on your mistakes and find out not so much what's the better move or what's the good move. Like what's the bad, move. Find out the reason, because you'll forget the game and the move, but you will remember the reason. The reason why queen b5 was bad wasn't the move itself. It was because it was backward, because it was passive, and because black simply did not think about what threats white can deliver on the king side. He was probably thinking a little more about what his challenges will be as he pushes the pawn. So after rook f5, the game was basically over. And after g takes f and then knight d4, wherever the queen goes, the game is bad. What's so interesting about this is really the concept. The concept is that, you see, first and foremost, you should be very careful when it comes down to breaking a rule. You can only do that if you know there is a great reason, and if you know that there's a good follow-up and a continuation afterwards breaking a rule. Another really interesting idea is to realize how necessary and important it is to practice. Practice on understanding things more. You see, I've recently started watching series of instructional videos, and something very important I found out was that when I go over that once, I realize some new things. But then when I go over it a second time after a while, I learn some new things as well. And that has to do with the reasoning behind some principles. I get it the first time, but I'm getting it in one way. And then when I look at them another time, I'm getting them in a different way, and I learn more. So something important is that when you analyze, when you study, when you exercise, try not to focus on the move or the specific idea. Focus on the reason, why that is happening, and how that's executed. When you break it down like this, you understand it, you remember it. And later on, you get to deepen that concept and realize how it works in an even better way. So this is very, very important. And it's a critical thing in this type of position. So what I would like to tell you is that first and foremost, the principle, or most of the principles that work out, are based on your experience, on your playing habits, and the way and how you percept the situations. If you know, you're good, and you shouldn't worry. But those are just a few little things that you'd like to remember. One more thing. I mean, if we just go back, I mean, there is this question that you're probably wondering about now. Valeri, how is that going? That, what did white do wrong? Because he obviously did something wrong. It wasn't exactly the thing that, could have gone perfectly. So what happened in this? I want to go right back and point out something really interesting to this. I mean, in regards to the position here. Going right back, sorry. Black played nicely. H takes to the G, rook G1, E takes F, bishop takes F, knight E5. But you're probably wondering, where did white make a mistake? So I'm going to let you to think. Okay, where did white really make the mistake? Where did he not go too well? I mean, was there any specific reason why things were that bad, or perhaps there was no reason? It is a great question. It is a really, really important question. So let's think a bit about it. What was it? What's the one thing that made things go wrong? Okay, I got a suggestion by someone. Thank you, by the way. This is important. It was a bad coordination of the piece, a good chance to get into tactical trouble. Yeah, that's pretty much one of the main reasons for white. But the reason why he got himself into this position where black got everything, despite his extremely promising situation, was just one. Go back, go back, go back. He played nicely. G4 was nice. Then there was something that he didn't do so nicely. And what he didn't do nicely was knight d4. Why? Why would a move like knight d4 not work? Because the reality is that knight d4 does not make a threat. Now, I would like to break that down a little bit. What's the problem with making a move like knight d4? It sounds like a move that will just strengthen up the position and just, immediately exercise pressure. So why not? Well, because it doesn't. You see, it's really interesting. Knight d4 is a move that looks good. But in the end, it doesn't do anything. It just looks good. So I want you to think about that kind of concept. It may look great, but it really doesn't matter how it looks, because the only thing that matters is what it will do, how it will deliver the actual attacks or threats or things you're looking for. Knight d4 wasn't that kind of move. Queen g4 or g2 would have been that kind of move in this position. For example, with the idea to bring over the pressure, to challenge against the g3, and hold on to the idea of attacking. So it's like a very interesting principle that you need to remember. What is so critical about it is the thing on queen g3. Does that make a threat? No, it doesn't. But what's so beautiful about it is that this would have been the perfect move to start making trouble. Queen takes g3. And then I guess if black played along with the move of, I don't know, like after queen g2, like b4, I could have done knight d5. Then in case of knight takes d5, there's queen takes g3. And then in case we go right back, there is edicts to the d5. Those moves are not just moves. Those moves were threats. And those moves were going to create more threats and more problems as the position progresses. Now that is what you care about most. This is the one thing you care about most in a position like that. Because when you care about most in this, you're not going to make a mistake. That's the big deal. What I love about, you see, in this situation is that White did not follow that principle, that rule, more or less, we could say. And that's why he got himself into a little bit of trouble. But yeah, it's a really nice thing to mention, and it's a good thing to know too. So don't forget that idea. Principles are just as important, and you have to know them. You have to think about them so that you're always aware. I hope you liked today's lecture and some of the most important principles that we got to talk about. Again, there's always something that you need to remember and follow up and everything. So if you have any questions, do not forget to write me. You can directly write to me on my email, which is valeri.lilov@gmail.com, or actually directly through my website, which is tigerlilov.com. Also, don't forget the 50% fantastic video course by Grandmaster Valeri Lilov, who is actually the author or co-author, so to speak, of those games that we looked at. He's made a brilliant top Grandmaster course that you might love to check out. So check this out below in the link below the video, or the link from the chat that I just posted. Thank you so much, and have a great weekend. I'll speak to you next Saturday.